And now we take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. President Bola Tinubu has commended the efforts of the military in the fight against insurgency while promising to equip it to become one of the best in the world. He said this when he performed the groundbreaking ceremony for the construction of the new Armed Forces headquarters complex in Abuja. Arise News defense correspondent Ferdinand Duroha reports.
Presently, the Armed Forces complex sits on a temporary site in Gariki, Abuja. Now, the federal government, the armed forces and the management of the FCT are seeking to relocate the complex to a permanent site. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, says siting the complex away from the city center will mitigate movement of military convoys within the city and strengthen defense operations.
As we perform this groundbreaking ceremony for the new Armed Forces complex, let it symbolize not just bricks and mortar, but a legacy or project of Mr. President's renewed hope agenda. May this moment also reflect our resolve to work together and assiduously to bring this edifice to fruition. Let this renewed Armed Forces headquarters complex be a national monument, a beacon of strength and resilience for all who serve and are serving in these great armed forces of Nigeria.
Before performing the groundbreaking, President Tinubu extolled the efforts of the military in the fight against insecurity and promised to complete the first phase of the complex before the end of his tenure.
It is fitting and a grateful nation honors your sacrifices with state-of-the-art facility that reflect the high standard demanded of you. Under the banner of our renewed hope administration, I reaffirm my commitment to building a well-equipped and truly professional military that embodies our nation's pride. In this regard, I have authorized measures to enhance our operational effectiveness, including procuring critical equipment.
The new Armed Forces complex, when completed, will serve as a hub for synergy between the members of the armed forces. It is also expected to boost the military's efforts to build a befitting military-industrial complex. President Tinubu also inspected some military hardware locally manufactured by Nigerian defense companies, which will form the hub of the nation's military complex. Meanwhile, President Tinubu also commissioned the 614 accommodations barracks constructed by the Army and named in honor of the President in Asokoro, Abuja. According to the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyede, the newly built Bola Ahmed Tinubu barracks will help mitigate challenges of housing, with over 40% of Nigerian Army personnel without housing accommodation. Ferdinand Duroha, Arise News.
Well, thank you for that report, Ferdinand. Rufai, this morning we're congratulating the Chief of Defense Staff, General C.G. Musa, and of course the President on this groundbreaking ceremony, especially with the naming of the barracks after him. What's your take on this story?
Okay, this is how many projects now named after President Tinubu while he's still in power? The fourth one.
Yes, fourth major one.
Fourth major one. Anyway, that aside, congratulations to the military, congratulations to the President on this groundbreaking, as it were. He said he's going to try to finish the first phase of this project before he leaves power. And congratulations on the new military barrack, because the case of welfare has always been made for the military, and housing is a big problem. So having more barracks where major generals and top echelons of the military and even people on the lower rung of the military can live is always a welcome development. Also, I'm excited that we're doing a lot more work as regards, our military-industrial complex. But I'm also very ambivalent about that. I'm not saying we shouldn't have some military-industrial complex of some sort, where we can build our own military and all of that and build weaponry and all of that. But I don't want that to be the focus. And I say that because when you hear the word military-industrial complex, pretty much it shows a lot of spending towards the military because there's increased cases of insecurity. At some point, we want a reduction. So we don't want most of this spending to constantly go to military and security, where we can use that spending to be able to build, hospitals and schools that can enhance the lives of people and invest in the social welfare, So this talk about military-industrial complex, I'm a little bit iffy when you look at the grand general meaning of a military-industrial complex. But it's good we started to, build some things here. MRAPs, most especially by Daikon. And I must have to say kudos to Daikon, because I've seen some things they've built. I've seen the drones they've built. I've also seen other military vehicles like that Proforce has built in the past. And now MRAPs, which is something that we definitely used to import before. Now we couple it together here, which is another very good one. And those MRAPs were showcased that they built in here. That's another good one. But, as we're talking in terms of the military and praising them and all of that, we should also talk about the human rights debacle of the military. I know it's a day to celebrate the military, but we should not forget, Okwama is one of them. Can we also talk to the military and beg them to reduce cases like this? Also, there's another case that was released recently of a top major general in the army that was seen to have hurt somebody and beat people on the road. Things like that, military and civil relations. We need to be able to improve on that if we truly want to build our democracy. Cases like Okwama and other citizens that have been affected by the sorry side of the military. But apart from that, we cannot but celebrate the great work they have done in ensuring that this country is kept together and the sovereignty of this country is intact.
All right, Dr. Bati.
Okay, a number of issues. One, there's almost the unwritten rule that every president that comes along will encourage the troops, will encourage the military establishment. Why? Because the president of Nigeria is, described as president, commander-in-chief of the armed forces. There's no and in between. He's president, commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Nigeria. Now, so the commander-in-chief has a personal responsibility to encourage the troops. So it is after a fashion that you will find President Bola Ahmed Tinubu saying that he's committed to the welfare of officers and men of the armed forces. Is their commander-in-chief, and that is the primary responsibility of the commander-in-chief, particularly at a time and against the background that we have seen, whereby, officers of the Nigerian military, of the Nigerian armed forces, we have had cases of some of them deserting the war front. We have had cases of some of them complaining about welfare. We have had cases of their widows, the people who died at the war front, saying that, they've not been taken care of after their men fell. So I think it was important messaging on the part of the president to use the occasion of the, of the launch of a new defense complex and a new accommodation for officers and men to drive home this point. The second point has to do with about increasing the capability of the military. And it was in that context that President Tinubu spoke about the strengthening, the building of a military industrial complex. Now, Daikon, that's the Defense Industrial Corporation of Nigeria. I think it's in Kaduna. I once followed President Jonathan to the place. Now, it was a concept that was supposed to make, the armed forces a major creative, innovative hub. Over the years, one chief of defense staff after the other will say, we are building drones. Some will come and say, we are building armored vehicles. So, in other words, is to enhance, deepen the combat readiness of the military. That, again, is a very laudable objective. You also have the Nigerian Army Engineering Command, which is also supposed to be creative. We have cited before, in the course of this job, the example of a time when they had issues in Ghana with civil servants. Do you know that they brought out the soldiers? Soldiers manned the hospitals. Soldiers took over everywhere. In other words, the military can be an aid to civil authority, as it is also recognized in the Nigerian Constitution. But even in terms of their own operation, they must be excellent. Nigeria has not been at war, since the 1970s. We've only done international engagements, Sierra Leone, Liberia, United Nations contributions. But the Nigerian military must always be in a state of readiness. And it is the duty of the commander-in-chief to make sure that his troops are ready at all times. Now, what is the third point? Which is the missing point, or maybe the fourth point? It's about accountability. Senator Adams Oshiomhole was the one who raised the point on the floor of the Senate about the accountability of the Nigerian military. It was, I think, shouted down or shut down or ignored by his own colleagues. Now, the point must be continually made that while the commander-in-chief and the federal government does everything within its power to encourage the military, accountability is very important. We cannot have any unit in this country that is outside the province of transparency and accountability. And in terms of conduct, this is the fifth point, the Nigerian armed forces must also know that they are subordinate to civilian authority. Every chief of defense staff that comes along talks about professionalism. That is what we expect from them. Unfortunately, we have used the military too many times to do police work. And the increasing threat of the civilization of the Nigerian military is the biggest challenge that Nigeria faces, even as every commander-in-chief tries to encourage the military.
All right, well, congratulations to the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, on this groundbreaking ceremony. Also, the Chief of Defense Staff for the Armed Forces Complex, which has been temporarily housed, currently close to, I believe, a Garki area of Abuja. But they said that was supposed to be a temporary situation for them, and now they're moving to a bigger and more befitting complex in Asokoro, in Abuja. Now, the significance of this, of course, what we've talked about is a better operating space for them, also a boost to the military with regards to conducive and safe and enhanced working space for personnel activities and duties. And also, I think also the fact that the President himself made it a point of duty to be there personally for the groundbreaking ceremony. Recall just a few days back, we had the Armed Forces Remembrance Day, and the President was unfortunately away, and his vice represented him for the ceremonies. And we had said that as Commander-in-Chief, and also to demonstrate support, commitment, a boost to the morale of the, of the armed forces, it was important for him to make symbolic gestures like this by being present when they have, event of this or such importance. But beyond that, I think it's also important that it was mentioned that Julius Berger partnered with the army to build this defense complex, this armed forces complex, and that the Chief of Defense Staff had spoken about how professional, diligent, and how well they had done it within the time frame allocated. This is in light of the recent accusations made against Julius Berger that they were, with the Abuja-Kaduna Expressway, that they didn't handle that project properly. Again, they have demonstrated 60 years of work in Nigeria, and also that it's a Nigerian company that was given the contract to build this complex. I think that's quite important. And then for the barracks, of course, congratulations as well. They've talked about how it would house different ranks of military personnel. Also, the Chief of Army Staff used the opportunity to describe the different amenities and how this will help with the military with regards to the housing deficit. But I think very importantly is the fact that this was started during the last Chief of Army Staff's tenure under Lieutenant General Taoreed Lagbaja and completed by the new Chief of Army Staff. So this is part of his legacy project, and it's finished in record time. We've often talked about how the wealth of the military ought to be paramount. As we celebrate them, as we continue to ask them to ensure they are able to tackle, especially terrorism in the northeast and north, and also secure our borders, it's important to ensure that the people who sometimes pay the ultimate price in the course of their work are able to have some, dignity of life in the way that they live. We look at some barracks and they look deplorable. It's great to note that in the 2025 budget, about 64.88 billion naira has been allocated to building barracks, military barracks, and 12.95 billion naira has been allocated for maintenance of existing barracks. So these are welcome development when it comes to highlighting the welfare. We saw the video footage there, and we saw the amenities, some of the amenities, tennis court, a recreational area. We all talked about social amenities, a powerhouse in itself. So great to see that. And so when the state provides a suitable and conducive environment or amenities for the military, then we can make a call and a demand on them for them to take on the action and do what, with regards to pushing back on security. A Bloomberg article recently talked about the efforts of the military in ensuring that they were able to stem the tide of crude oil theft, hence shoring up crude oil production for Nigeria, currently at about 1.4 million barrels per day. So these are some of the wins. And so today, I salute the wins of the military so far, and hoping that with this, milestone, they'll be able to do even more to let us see less collateral damage when we talk about those bombings that have killed some civilians in some parts of the country. Let's talk about pushing back and really decimating terrorism and a number of other issues. But again, congratulations. This is a very good move. I look forward to seeing even more done for our, troops, whether they're on duty, or, whether they are at the front line or whether they are just, in interim and securing our borders. Well done.